Hey there, lovely people! Welcome back to another Story Study Saturday. I'm Sammi, and I'm a writer who likes to learn about writing through reading and share what I learn with you. This week, I am talking about Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. Boulley? Originally, I wasn't planning to dive super far into this book because this was one of my burnout audiobooks, and I don't generally think too hard while I'm listening to audiobooks. They're more of like, I'm downloading the story rather than I'm processing the story, but there were so many moments in this book that made me process it that I couldn't not. So here we are, breaking down the story. I really enjoyed this book. I've been recommending it to so many people. There are so many things that I really enjoy about it. So let's jump into a quick summary in case you don't know what this book is about. Firekeeper's Daughter is the story of Donis, a half-native, half-white girl who's lost several people close to her due to a meth problem in the community. She becomes a confidential informant to the FBI's investigation of what's going on in this community and has to navigate what that means for her relationships inside and outside of the investigation. So let's get into my thoughts. I love how the community and the culture of her native heritage is introduced, and I love that it comes in because she's mixed and we get this beautiful combination of this is my family and this is my family, and these are the differences between my families, and this is what this family doesn't understand about this family, but I love them all because they're all my family. It provides this perfect bridge for being a reader who is not native, who doesn't know the reference points that a native reader might know, and that a fully native character would just be fully immersed in. That's just who they are and what they stand for and how they live their lives. Having this mixed character gives you such a natural and easy transition from a non-native reader's perspective into this culture and conflict that is so important to the story that you don't have to stop and ask questions about things that you don't understand because they've already explained the differences in the cultures in a way that perfectly blends with what the character is doing, what they're standing for, who they care about, and it makes you feel welcomed as a non-native person reading it, giving you that point of reference to be able to fully immerse and care for all of the characters in the story without confusion. It kind of makes Donis a character that is built for exposition without making it like a burden, without over-explaining everything, because she's a very effective character type to be able to explain something from both sides of things to someone from either sides of things. It's a well-crafted character for the story and the potential audiences that it can face. I also really enjoyed that we got to experience the characters that are close to her in two separate statuses of Donis's life, before and after she decided to become a CI for this investigation. And you can see exactly how her becoming a CI affected her relationships because you can see the before and after. And seeing her go through this crisis of like identity and relationships and connection, inner human connection, and what she really wants out of this situation, what she really stands for in this particular situation, and watching her react to the way that those relationships change is very powerful. It's a very powerful experience. You have a lot of empathy. I had a lot of empathy for the character as she was going through these things, and like a lot of her values come from her relationships with people and like building and protecting and caring for others, and having that sort of crumbling around her gave her this devastation. And it was very, very powerful to witness as a reader. I also appreciated that in the culture that we were presented, it was established that everything said in their native language was immediately then repeated by the same thing in English. So it created this sense of like, this is how this happens. This is how elders talk to younger members of the tribe. This is how events and meetings and gatherings and like collections of this tribe communicate, is they welcome everyone and give you the opportunity to like hear the native language and comprehend the native language by repeating it in English, which creates this lovely advanced lowering of the language barrier to the reader, where in another book where perhaps like the characters speak Spanish, I wouldn't question it if we got lines in Spanish from a parent that then was responded to by a child in English, and then we were able to pull the context clues if he didn't speak Spanish without like immediately repeating it. It would bother me if they said something like this line in Spanish and then repeated it immediately with this line in English. That would like be a big turnoff for me as a reader, but because it was established in the world that this is how things happen, I really appreciated it because I didn't feel like I had to know another language. I didn't feel like I had to comprehend everything that was going on in this culture through context clues because it was established that they do both, that it's welcoming. And whether that's a real thing that happens in the tribe that this was based off of or not, it doesn't bother me either way. I think that if it was done as a tool in this story, it was done really well to make it not feel like you're imposing on the story by not knowing the language. It takes away the echo effect that happens with other, like, more commonly spoken languages, like Spanish. I really enjoyed that. A lot of this book felt like it was inviting you as a non-native person to understand this native culture, and I think that that's super important for especially marginalized groups that aren't super well represented to have something that easily allows people outside of that culture to empathize with it. Everybody is people, and like everybody is people. That's a statement. I'm gonna stick with it. Everybody is people, and people all have the same, like, trials and tribulations in different settings. So you should always be able to empathize with other people, and having a culture be a barrier to it, othering yourself in the real world from people who are just people of a different culture, it makes it so much easier to think like what they go through is not the same as what we go through. Being able to write for people outside of the culture that is represented in the book and welcoming people outside of the culture to view the people in the culture empathetically, I think is very important for groups like Native communities, other groups that are diminished by a lack of understanding of their culture. So I think this book does a really great job of creating a smaller bridge between, like, an easier to cross bridge between non-native cultures and native culture. I really enjoyed this book. There is one thing that I think could be improved, and then there are a handful of things that I think we can learn from it. What I think could be improved is I wish I had a clearer mental image of Donis. I think every single time that we got some information about her physical appearance, I had to completely remake my mental image of her, and that's not, like, super important. But I do think if you are having a character that is notably different than the standard character, which is typically like a white, skinny-ish girl, and like with whatever hair color and eye color you end up giving her, if you don't give that clear enough, then that's what people are going to naturally sort of jump to. So, like, obviously I know that she's mixed. She's half native, half white. I know that. I don't know what her body type is. I don't know if she's tall or short. I don't really know, like, the color of her hair. I can guess, but then as we start to, like, gather more information, all of those details start to fall in very, very slowly across the whole book. So then you start to figure out, like, oh, maybe she's a little bit more heavyset. Okay, cool. And then, like, you reshape your image. I can understand if you don't want to, like, put something in immediately to, like, have that be something that shapes your character. But also, it's really nice. It's really nice to have a character that you can imagine being different than the stereotypical character that, like, you just automatically put in. I almost always automatically put in myself. That's what I do. If you get, like, your popular YA fiction, whatever, it's like a blonde white girl, and that's not what I look like. So I just sort of put myself in there. That's just what I do, is I assume that the character looks like me. I attribute different features to this base model. So once I get different reference points, then I start to be able to build out this character as who they are. And it was so many steps. And every time I felt confident, like, okay, this is what she looks like, I would get something else and I'd be like, all right, never mind, this is what she looks like. It's not that big of a deal. It's not. But I do think that that's something that could be improved, is just giving me a clearer picture earlier on. And I was listening to it, so I might have missed something earlier on that would have been like, oh, okay, great. We got it. Clicked. And then the details that I caught later on were just referencing back to that. I'm not entirely sure. I will probably reread it at some point when I'm, like, in the mood to reread it. I do think this would be a nice book to read with my eyes. It was very, very pleasant to read with my ears because they had a narrator who knew the language instead of me, like, mentally butchering it the way that I do with fantasy characters. I definitely think this is a book that if you're not going to just listen to, you should definitely have simultaneous audiobook and book going on, because it does add a whole lot to the experience of it. I really enjoyed it. We know that. We know that I enjoyed it. On to what I think writers can learn from this book. I've already said it. I think this book does an amazing job of introducing a community in a way that can universally be responded to with compassion and empathy and I think that that's an amazing thing. And I think that more people should be introducing their communities like this. I think it was done really, really well, and I really appreciated it. I also think that this has a love story in it that really focuses in on what is important in a relationship, and I think it does that really well. And you don't see it super often, so I really enjoyed that. And I think that that's something that more people should be thinking about in a lot of these like love stories that are, oh, we met 2 weeks ago and now we're totally in love and I would die for you kind of stories. I think it's really refreshing to have a more realistic relationship in a book set in the real world. This is also a great example of the different ways that people are tied together in relationships, in communities, and how one character's actions impacts those ties. And it does a really, really good job of that. It's a very interesting way of looking at things, and I would love to see more of that in books like this. This book also does a really good job of weaving grief and death into a character's actions without making them like a walking abundance of grief and like showing off all the time that they're doing things out of grief. It kind of just comes from a naturally motivated, I have to do this because I feel bad. I miss my family member. I feel like I could have done something more. I'm gonna do more now. Something like that. It's motivating their actions without being like a weight that is noticeable on what they're doing. Overall, I think this is a great example of really high stakes, getting clues out at the perfect time to get clues out. It's an investigation after all. I wouldn't call it like a mystery or a thriller. Maybe I should, but I wouldn't. It does a lot with that, and it creates a lot of drama, which is very well done. But that is all that I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It'll really help me out and get this video to more people. Have you read Firekeeper's Daughter? What are your thoughts on it? Leave me a comment down below. Super, super interested in hearing other people's thoughts, because I am telling everyone I know to read this book at any given moment. If you didn't enjoy it, I'd honestly like to know why. What stood out to you as being something that you didn't like about it? I'm always so curious about how other people interact with the same stories that I'm interacting with, and I think it would be really interesting to have a little chat about it. If you don't want to miss any of my videos, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. I either post on Tuesdays with something that is a writing topic based video, or on Saturdays with story study videos like this. So if you don't want to miss any of those uploads, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week.